there anything that President Biden did that you like?
No, I can't think of nothing,
Is there anything that he's done as president that has been of value?
Nope. Run our gas prices up and wants to get rid of our Social Security and that? No.
TYT attended Trump's rally in Iowa, where his fans shared their thoughts on Biden, Trump, of course, and how the economy is doing. Now, the guy that you just heard from, I should say, once again proved that Trump has taken a pretty successful route in his campaigning by focusing on how he's going to protect Social Security. In previous segments, we've shown you how he attempted to cut Social Security through his budget proposals when he was president. But nonetheless, he's a good marketer and he's repetitive in his self-promotion. And so when he says he's gonna protect Social Security over and over again, his supporters buy it, they start to believe it. And that was definitely the case in the video you just watched. Now, when Michael Shure asked another rally goer if he could name anything good that Biden had done for the economy, he actually conceded 1 point. Let's watch.
And let's talk about President Biden a little bit. Is there anything he's done that you can point to as being good for America?
I mean, I hate to say it, don't judge me for this, but I kind of like the whole student loan thing. But again, everybody's gonna pay for everybody's student loans. So honestly, no, I can't think of anything that he's done for me, honestly.
I thought that was a really interesting answer. I thought it was also interesting that he felt like he had to be kind of sheepish in giving Biden credit for an area where he actually did something helpful for the American people, helpful for students. No, if you think he did well there, then you should proudly say it while also acknowledging where you think he failed the American people, whether it's through the economy and his policies for the economy or anything else. But what do you think about that, Cenk?
Well, first of all, I was glad to see that he was willing to do an interview on television, even though he's Amish.
Come on, Cenk.
I'm kidding. I don't know that he's Amish. Okay, seriously, there's a couple of things I noticed there. Number one, truth should matter. You shouldn't get into the two camps and go, okay, that's it. Since I'm in this camp, I'm gonna give zero credit to the other side, and all I'm gonna do is say they do everything wrong, right? So, like the criminal justice reform bill that Trump passed, pretty good bill. There's no, I don't have to hate the bill just because Trump, it passed under Trump and Trump helped it to pass. He later said he regretted it, so you get a sense of that it was a good bill. Okay, but I'll take it. I'll take any good actions wherever they come from, right? And so, but the reason the guy's worried about saying the student debt relief, because he's worried that he's gonna get judged by other Trump fans. Like, how dare you admit that the other side has anything good, right?
Yeah.
And then, which by the way, also definitely applies to Democrats.
100%.
No question, right?
No, it's Cenk. I have to give an example of it because I'm sorry, I tried to pretend like it was a tie, but in retrospect, it wasn't a tie. Ron DeSantis spanked Gavin Newsom in that debate. And the reason why he spanked Gavin Newsom in that debate is because he came prepared and because Gavin Newsom really has no leg to stand on in regard to some of his failures right here in the state of California. But it didn't matter because Democrats were all over social media talking about how Gavin Newsom destroyed Ron DeSantis. No, there were a lot of successful dunks against Ron DeSantis. I'm sorry, against Gavin Newsom by Ron DeSantis. But the thing is, when you're blinded by that partisan virus that so many Americans are blinded by, you're unable to see things clearly. There were areas where Newsom did well, right? On the abortion part of the debate, Newsom did really well. But people are just unable to see things clearly because they think they need to root for a team and stick to that team no matter what.
Well, the debate's a little bit different too because Gavin Newsom had better zingers, and that's what I saw all over media. But is that what a debate is? Who cares about the substance? Who cares who's right about crime, unemployment, whatever the different things that they're debating? Who had the better zingers? And unfortunately, that's how debates are judged. And that's a very silly way to judge a debate, right? So now back to these guys. But if you notice, they also believe things that aren't true. Like Joe Biden hasn't proposed to cut Social Security, Donald Trump and the Republicans have, right? So, but politics is all about marketing. And so Donald Trump is an infinitely better marketer than Joe Biden is. So his supporters think that Biden's the one trying to cut Social Security when he isn't.
I know, and that's a damn shame. It really is, because one of the, I guess, highlights of Biden's presidency was the State of the Union address, in which he called out Republicans who were, salivating over the notion of cutting Social Security benefits, and Republicans lost their minds, and it was a big chaotic moment during his speech. But apparently that reality of Democrats wanting to protect Social Security, not all of them, but most of them, with Republicans wanting to cut it or privatize it, like that hasn't really translated to some of these Republican voters who want to protect Social Security for good reason. It's a good program, and it's popular due to the fact that it keeps elderly people off the streets, out of extreme poverty. So with that said, a 2022 Economist YouGov poll found every element of Biden's plan to reduce student debt was enjoyed by the majority of voters, and that does in fact include Republicans. So let's take a look at this graphic, I should say. So extending the payment moratorium until the end of the year. It also included canceling $10,000 of debt for individuals earning less than $125,000. It included capping monthly payments at 5% of a borrower's monthly income. That is tremendously helpful for student borrowers. Forgiving loan balances of $12,000 or less after 10 years of payments. All of this stuff is tremendously popular, right? And that includes Republican voters as well, because guess what? Republicans go to college too. They had to take out loans as well. And so any economic assistance, any economic help is something that's gonna do well for a president. But other Trump voters made clear that they're still hurting financially, and that inflation and the sky-high cost of living is something that they're blaming Biden for. Let's watch.
The jobs numbers are pretty good in this country right now. What is it, I know you credit President Trump with good jobs numbers. Do you give the same credit to President Biden for that?
Absolutely not.
How come?
COVID had a lot to do with the jobs leaving, but his numbers showing that he created X amount of jobs. Well, most of them jobs are part-time jobs. They're not full-time jobs. I work 3 jobs plus own my own business, and I still struggle to support my family.
I thought that was an incredibly important answer by a Trump supporter. Even if you disagree with him politically, I think it's also important to keep in mind that, the Democrats constantly touting the low unemployment rate and basically declaring that the economy is a big win is gonna upset a lot of voters, not just Republicans, but Democrats as well. Because if you are working and you're working hard, but you're still having difficulty paying your bills due to inflation, well, then it's gonna be infuriating to hear politicians, especially the current party that's in charge, brag about how well the economy is doing.
Yeah, so mixed feelings about that one, because on the one hand, we're fair. We gave you some stats a couple of times where Donald Trump created about 6 to 7 million jobs pre-COVID, okay? Not including the COVID numbers, because of course they fall off a cliff during COVID. But Biden has created 14 to 15 million jobs, way more, okay? And now if he says, look, yeah, but a lot of them got rehired after COVID, okay, that's fair, and we can have a conversation about that. But to say that Biden hasn't created jobs is absurd, and he's created at least twice as many jobs as Trump did. Plus, right now we're at record low unemployment. So it's hard to beat record low unemployment. Now, having said that, he hits on something that Democrats just can't seem to understand, Democratic leaders, which is, yes, but how good are the jobs, right? In the old days, you had a job and you only needed one earner in the family, and you took care of your family and you had a house in the suburbs. Now you need at least 3 jobs to even have a prayer of a house in the suburbs, and you need both the partners working in the relationship. So when Democrats say, no, we crushed it, and it doesn't match people's experience. And they might think, yeah, I got a job. In fact, I have too many jobs, right? But this isn't getting it done, and we're not living like we used to, like our parents used to, et cetera. And these guys keep telling me that I should be super happy about what they did for me. That's where the disconnect comes in. And that's where some voters, And you can say hardcore MAGA, forget them, but for independents, that's the critical voting bloc.
Yep.
For a lot of independents, they're saying, look, you keep telling me how great the economy is, but I know my life, right? And my life doesn't indicate that. And that's creating a disconnect that's very problematic for the election.
I'll give you an example. Pretty close to the 2026 election season, Obama was touring the country touting his economic accomplishments, and he went to one of these swing states and made the unfortunate decision to speak to voters in an area of the country that had lost a ton of manufacturing jobs and they were really struggling. And so he's giving this speech about what he accomplished in the economy, especially after the 2008 economic collapse. And that ended up backfiring tremendously, and for good reason. I mean, how infuriating would it be to hear any politician, Democrat or Republican, tout their economic accomplishments as you're suffering economically, as jobs are leaving your town? I just feel like the Obama camp should have been a little smarter in regard to their messaging there, but they weren't, and that ended up hurting Democrats in the 2016 presidential election, especially at a time when you had Trump, posing as this economic populist in all of his messaging during that election.
Yeah, there's one other thing here. I don't want it to pass without commenting on it. It's not like wages were super high under Trump. We had the same exact problem. In fact, their wages were lower under Trump, and so. But his supporters wear rose-colored glasses when it comes to Trump. They think Trump can do no wrong, so they don't want to hear the facts about number of jobs, wages, etc. But when Biden says everything's going great, then they hate him, right? And part of that disconnect is because Trump gives them a reason to get excited, right? And he says, look, I'm gonna hate the guys that you hate, but on top of that, he does a lot of talk about how he's gonna deliver for American workers, how he's gonna put America first, how he's gonna create jobs, jobs, jobs. Wherever he goes, he says, I'm gonna fight for you, I'm gonna fight NAFTA. And by the way, he did fight NAFTA, okay, to be fair, right? Whereas Biden never mentions his accomplishments, and if he does it in a ham-handed way. He doesn't talk about them consistently, and you never see Biden like getting animated about fighting for the average American and the average worker. And so I don't think, I never see it. And
to be fair, you don't really see Biden get animated about anything.
Well, that's a giant problem in politics.
It is, it definitely is.
So right now, Trump is leading by 8 in the general election.
Right. And look, I also want to give you guys some numbers in regard to the unemployment rate. So employers in 2023 have added roughly 239,000 jobs on average monthly through October, compared with an average of 183,000 in the decade preceding January of 2020. So that gives you a good comparison between the numbers of jobs added under Biden versus Trump. Now, the unemployment rate earlier this year fell to the lowest level since 1969, though it has edged higher in recent months. So currently, the national unemployment rate stands at 3.9%, which is very low, but it also varies depending on what state you're in. This was something else that came up during the debate between Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom. This is fact check, this is real. I was actually shocked by it, but it is true. So the unemployment rate in California is currently 4.8%. In Florida, it's 2.8%. So it really does matter like which state you're living in. And while the national employment is in fact high, prices overall have gone up by 19% since the coronavirus pandemic. Before the pandemic, a gallon of whole milk cost $3.25 on average. Now it costs almost $4 according to the government data. A pound of ground chuck beef cost $4.10 before the pandemic. Now it costs $5.35. I mean, living in California, you look at those prices and it like blows your mind. I wish it cost $5.35 here in California. But anyway, car prices, that's another example, have increased by 30% from pre-pandemic times. So that inflation is really erasing some of the gains made by employment numbers.
Yeah, not only the employment numbers, but wages have gone up a little bit, but I'm not sure they've gone up enough to keep up with that inflation.
Correct.
So if you're an average American, you're seeing the price of everything go up. You still have to work your 3 jobs, and now you're barely being able to afford it. So even though wages were lower under Trump and jobs were a little bit lower under Trump, it still feels more painful because of the inflation now. And instead of addressing that, effectively the Democrats haven't. And so that's why partly you're seeing it because they're gonna support Trump no matter what. And partly you're seeing it because of the poor job the Democrats have done in making the case and in delivering.
But we got to give Joe Biden credit where credit is due, because he did do some like hand waving and some finger wagging when it came to corporations not treating their workers appropriately. So let's take a quick look at that.
We know the prices are still too high for too many things, that times are still too tough for too many families. But we made progress, but we have more work to do. Let me be clear. To any corporation that's not brought their prices back down, even as inflation has come down, even as supply chains have been rebuilt, it's time to stop the price gouging and give the American consumer a break.
That should do it. That should do it.
Yeah, wow, that was inspiring.
To be fair, I mean, I don't really know what the Biden administration.
No, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so here's the difference between Trump, Biden, and someone who actually cares, okay? So Biden goes, now any corporation, you better stop your price gouging. That doesn't mean anything, and it sounds flat, and nobody thinks he's gonna do anything about it, and it's not a specific proposal, right? Trump comes out and goes, hey, if this, I forget, Oreos, Nabisco, right? He would name companies. If you move your plant to Mexico, you're gonna have to deal with me, okay? Now, Democrats look at that and go, that guy looks deranged and he's attacking a company.
It's unbecoming. It's unbecoming of a president.
It's not very gentlemanly, right? No. What the American people see is, that guy's defending me.
He's fighting for me.
He's fighting for me so that Nabisco doesn't, I forget if it was Nabisco, it said.
Yeah.
But that company doesn't outsource to Mexico. Now, behind the scenes, Trump didn't do anything. He didn't actually threaten them, and then they would have, after he does that big brouhaha, they'd move the factory to Mexico and Trump wouldn't do anything. Okay, we cover those type of stories all the time. And in fact, in the beginning, I gave him credit and the Democrats were furious. I was like, actually, you should threaten the companies like that, right? But then I had to come back and say, it turns out he was just bluffing and he didn't do anything, right? So what you should do in reality, if you cared, is you should pick certain companies and say, if you continue, look, here's what you said on your earnings call. So grocery stores have been bragging to the during earnings calls of the stock market about how they were doing price gouging. They were like, turns out the market could bear it, so we kept charging higher and higher prices. And there's direct quotes, because I know, because we shared it on the show with you guys. I would take that direct quote and go, okay, if this company continues to price gouge on purpose, here's a proposal that I have. I'm going to increase their tax, whatever it is, right? Have a specific proposal about that company and that industry, and then do it. And then when you do it, you know what's gonna happen? I keep thinking of Stop and Shop, because that used to be my grocery store as I was growing up a million years ago. Then Stop and Shop is gonna panic, right? And then they're gonna have all their CNBC anchors go out and go, this is outrageous what President Biden is doing. They can't do this to Stop and Shop. And Jim Cramer will start crying on TV. They'll bring on like the owner of the store to cry on TV. I only have 17 billion left, right? And the whole time the American people are hearing, the president's fighting for me. He's actually trying to stop higher prices.
Yeah.
But Biden would never do that. And so neither would Trump, because they actually all get paid by those companies. They get campaign donations, both sides do.
Yeah.
But at least Trump is better at marketing.
The other thing I'll say is, for people who want to pour cold water on the notion that these companies, these corporations are price gouging, even though so many reports and investigations, including 2 different reports in the Wall Street Journal, made it abundantly clear that they were in fact price gouging. They'll argue, no, companies are gonna charge what they think they can get away with. That's true, but we're not talking about items that are unnecessary, elective items, if you will. We're talking about groceries. We're talking about things that people have no choice but to buy, which is why you see more and more Americans dipping into their savings accounts, taking money out of their retirement accounts, going deeper and deeper into debt. Because when it comes to transportation, when it comes to food on the table for your family, those are not luxury buys. Those are things that you need for survival. And it is pretty gross when companies take advantage of that desperation and engage in the price gouging because they know they can get away with it due to the inflation narrative that's playing out in the media.
Last thing, why does Biden go give a totally toothless speech where he knows he's not going to do anything about price gouging? Because he knows that mainstream media is going to run huge headlines saying, Biden attacks price gouging, right? Now, because the corporate press is never going to tell you he didn't actually do anything. It was just a bluff, and it was a very, very mild and obvious bluff. And prove me wrong, show me one thing that Biden has done to stop the price gouging. It doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that those Trump guys that showed you in the rallies are correct. Biden's not trying to cut Social Security. Trump didn't create more jobs. What we're pointing out is the problems that the Democratic Party has in messaging and in delivering for the voters, that if they would do those things right, they could easily win all of these elections.
Yeah, totally agree.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a Young Turk.